My name is Matt Reddington. I am the Vice President of Packaging for Procure Analytics. We are a group purchasing office. We predominantly focus on the MRO category and packaging. We do about $1.1 billion of managed spend for folks every year, and our packaging group is the smaller portion of that. We grew about 85% so far this year, year over year. My interesting fact, since I used my Peloton one earlier this week, is actually that I was a D1 athlete in the newest sport for the Olympics, which is cheerleading. So I was a college cheerleader at Miami University in Ohio. I did my 4 years there, starting with Wally Zerbiak playing basketball and Ben Roethlisberger taking us out playing football. So it was a fantastic Mid-American Conference sports 4 years for me. As far as favorite sustainability story, I think it really took off during the pandemic, but it was actually created prior to the pandemic. And that is the flat PET wine bottle that was created in Britain to fit into mail slots. Because of the extra delivery, they had a 300% increase in special deliveries during the pandemic, and it really took off at that point in time. And so they've got a PET wine bottle that replaces a glass wine bottle. It's still 750 milliliters, slides right through that mail slot that you'd find in the Northeast in the US, but all over UK and England. And that's one of my favorite stories because they took something that's been around for over 200 years, figured out a way to make it out of 100% recycled plastic, 100% recyclable plastic, and it delivers wine, which everybody needs during the pandemic. So thank you, Sarah.
Matt, it reminds me of the group that's come up with flat pasta. Mm-hmm. So there's been some articles coming out about it, and their hope is that it will be more sustainable and easier to ship because the plastic is flat. So kind of along the same lines. I think that's very interesting. So Matt, great to have you back on stage with me this week. And thanks again for taking time. I know kids are back in school and it's late for you.
Thank you.
Ryan, glad to have you on our panel today. Would love to have you introduce yourself, share a personal, interesting fact, and then a favorite sustainable packaging story.
Right on. My name is Ryan Fox. I'm a corrugated packaging analyst with Bloomberg, contributing writer to our new publication called The Box Report. Personal fact that's interesting. I'm 6'6", and I was a left-handed pitcher, and I, in my career, threw 2 complete game no-hitters, and was actually part of a third no-hitter, but it was a combined. I actually came in and pitched the last 2 innings of the game to complete a combined no-hitter. So that's fun. And favorite sustainable packaging story. I guess my most recent project was a conversion for taking a customer away from polyurethane foam. So we converted their polyurethane foam contraption into a corrugated application. It ended up saving them $80,000 in annual spend, and it was better for the environment. So it's great.
We have some legit athletes on stage with us today. James, great to have you back on stage. Would like to have you introduce yourself, share a personal fact, and you got to show us the photo behind you quickly. Very, very cool.
Okay, very good.
And then would like to have you share a favorite sustainable packaging story.
Sure. James Jones, 20 plus years in packaging. I'm president of JKT Packaging Solutions.
Oh, James, we lost you there for a second.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
All right. So we are a full service packaging consulting group, and we do a few things. One is we do greenfield design, where if you just have a product and you need it designed and packaged, we can do that for you. We have designers in China and the Netherlands and South America that do those things for us. We also, most of what we do, clients bring us in to analyze their packaging spend and make recommendations as to how to rationalize their packaging spend. I'm spending 10 million on what are my opportunities? And we will go in and we will analyze your packaging spend with our proprietary models and our proprietary market data too, and we will tell you either A, yeah, you're doing great, you're getting great prices for your packaging, or B, there's an opportunity, or C, there's a real opportunity, you want to get us engaged, and we could either do direct sourcing or RFPs or anything like that. Interesting fact about me is this particular week, I'm not, happy about it, but I'm on the board of directors for an organization called B-Peace. And we go around to different countries and we consultants basically offer their time to go around to different companies in different countries and help improve throughput, help improve efficiencies in those countries with the idea of if the company can hire more people, if more people are working, there'll be less war, there'll be less violence. If more people got to get up and go to work, they're not out in gangs or joining terrorist organizations or something like that. Well, we've had a long-standing relationship with Afghanistan. We've sent several people in Afghanistan, and this week we've been inundated by a lot of our former clients and people we work with trying to get out of Afghanistan and trying to get them, visas and that kind of thing. And although we have a good relationship with the State Department, we are in no means buddy-buddy with the State Department. So a lot of those letters and everything have been pretty gut-wrenching, and women-owned businesses and that kind of thing. So not to bring everybody down, but that was kind of the thing that on my mind this week. And if it can stay on your mind and do whatever you can do to help, I would encourage you to do it. Sustainability, the thing I've really been fascinated by and enjoyed is all the different building materials over the last things that we have been pumping up for years are now getting traction. So building boxes out of hemp paper, hempcrete, paper trays out of bamboo, all these things are now being looked at and are being looked at as viable options. So really exciting time. I'm really excited for what the next 2-3 years is going to hold for us, because I know a lot of people that have done great innovations in hemp and bamboo and all sorts of stone paper and all sorts of things. And now they're really getting shots in America and in the Western society. So looking forward to that.
Awesome, James, and thank you for your service and work you're doing with your nonprofit. Very important. Corey, the pro podcaster, he's got his whole formal setup here. Great to have you with us tonight. Corey, would love to have you introduce yourself, tell us a personal fact, and then a favorite sustainable packaging story.
Thank you so much, Sarah. My name is Corey Connors. I'm a sustainable packaging consultant based out of Portland, Oregon. Been with Landsberg Aurora for 19 years. Unlike Ryan, I'm only 5'11" and a half, but that's the new 6 feet, if you guys aren't aware of that. So you should know that for social reasons. Fun fact about me, I've been in a couple of movies as an extra, including Men of Honor and Kindergarten Cop when I was a youngster. So that was a really neat experience, and I highly recommend that if you ever get a chance. A favorite sustainability story for me was a high-tech company we work with, where we replaced about 15 truckloads of polyethylene foam with a totally recycled high-density polyethylene thermoform tray design, and made out of 100% recycled milk jugs. So that, for me, that was a coup and totally a big win for the sustainability. And not only was it sustainable, but it saved them a fortune. So thank you so much.
It makes me think of the hashtag circular economy. That's a great example of that, Corey. Tom, you're up next.
Good evening, everybody. Sarah, thank you very much for inviting me today. Look forward to this opportunity. I own a company called Access Creative Group. I'm an independent sales and packaging consultant. I kind of started in this industry on the print side. I've been in the printing industry since, let's say, 38 years plus. My interesting story, despite the fact that I never worked for the organization directly, my grandfather started a paper converting company back in 1919 that made it through 3 generations and employed at one point over 500 people. I would work there during the summer times, and I had the unenviable title of stripper. And back in the day, strippers were people that would pull the paper up from around the blanks. We would have to do it by hand. Now people use jackhammers, but it's not a fun job. Let's put it that way. And I would say that the sustainability play I'd like to mention is the fact that my grandfather's company back in the 70s was recycling all that paper waste. You know, at one point they got to the point where they had this huge baling machine that would create almost pallet-sized bales of paper, and then they would sell it back to the supply chain. I potentially have some other examples I'd like to show later in the program, but that's kind of where I'm at this point.
Great, Tom. Thank you for being here. So the purpose of our conversation today is really going to be geared around procurement, strategic sourcing. The audience that's with us today and that will be watching this recording are people who are in procurement. So I want to make sure that this is kind of the focus of our conversation today. And so, Matt, I'm going to have the first question go over to you. Procurement professionals are super busy and they don't have time or resources to focus on all spend categories. They have to really prioritize where they're going to spend their resources. So why should procurement professionals care about packaging?
Well, Sarah, most don't, honestly. If you look at it, I've run procurement organizations, packaging, MRO, anything that's a tough category that has customization to it really falls to the bottom of the prioritization list. It's really for a number of reasons, right? It's hard to manage. You've got generalists that are experts at sourcing, they're experts at negotiations. But when you start getting into the tough specifications, there's easier categories to go after. It's usually not your largest spend category, and people don't worry about it until it becomes a problem. It really became a problem for folks during the pandemic when, one, they couldn't get packaging and all of a sudden they couldn't ship their product, or two, their package started getting damaged because they took a retail package and tried to shove it through an e-commerce supply chain. The pandemic really shone a light on those two reasons, but I don't know that the definition of packaging is really what everybody believes it is anymore, right? So the primary definition of packaging is it's there to protect the content from damage and get it from point A to point B. And I disagree with that. I actually think it's a fantastic marketing tool that the organizations haven't figured out a way to fully monetize yet. And with procurement, our goal is to add value to the organization. One way we can add value to the organization that is maybe not a PPV variance that we can go show to somebody and say, hey, look, here's a hard savings that we did, but a way to add additional pull-through of goods, right? We sold 1,000 last year, we sold 2,000 this year, is to treat that packaging, especially that tertiary or the outer package, as a marketing vehicle and look at ways of optimizing that. Over 50% of the packaging costs we design into a good before we ever source that packaging. And so if we can start thinking through this as procurement people and sourcing people around ways to monetize that packaging for our organization and to figure out how to right size that packaging, there's a huge world of upside benefits for procurement in packaging, and especially right now when it comes to freight rates. And I know there's something else coming up on that, so I'll stop with that piece right there.
So, Ryan, Matt highlighted some of the reasons why procurement often ignores packaging altogether, or it comes in under their radar when there's a major issue or crisis. It's not something that's sought after or often underspend originally. So another challenge is not only getting the packaging spend under control, but also the sustainability piece. So why should procurement care about sustainable packaging? And why do some companies have such a hard time pivoting to sustainable packaging, especially when procurement's involved?
Well, the first domino fell last month when Maine passed their EPR laws. And the second domino fell just a few weeks ago in Oregon. So in the next 5 to 10 years, you better have your packaging right, because it's going to cost a lot of money for packaging that is not considered sustainable.
Now, Ryan, for those who are with us that aren't familiar with those, can you just give a quick overview about what was just passed and what that means from a financial perspective?
So EPR laws, extended producer responsibility laws, are pretty common all over the globe, but the United States. And essentially what it is, it's a fee structure that is laid out for brands where they, for lack of better words, are taxed um, based on the amount of weight for their packaging that they are using by commodity. And they are incentivized to use commodities that are highly recyclable and have robust aftermarkets. So corrugated has a great aftermarket. It's worth a lot of money right now. That will have probably the lowest fee structure, or one of the lowest. Number one and number two, plastics, great robust aftermarket, highly recyclable, also low fee structure. If your packaging is biodegradable, compostable, again, it will have a pretty low fee structure. But if you're using expanded polystyrene, polyethylenes, polyurethanes, anything that cannot be recycled, expect to pay fees that are much higher than the sustainable options that are out there. So why they should care about it? Get in front of that wave now. Get your packaging straight now so that you don't have to worry about it in 5 years when your state rolls it out and says, oh, by the way, based on what your brand is doing in the state, you're going to be paying somewhere in the tune of $25,000 or $50,000 a year to help the local municipalities in the state process that waste.
Ryan,
And
it's also important, right, that each state's different.
Yeah, so every state is going to have their own expression of these EPR laws. They're not going to be the same. Each one is going to be a little bit different. But what they're noticing is that your local material recovery facility is losing money, and they need to find cash to operate. So they're going to go to the brands and they're going to say, hey, you're creating this trash, you can pay for it. And ultimately that's going to be the way to move the needle for a greener packaging solution.
Ryan, one of the important things that brings up is, there's a big cost component if companies don't care about sustainability in the future. And one of the things that procurement is involved with is helping control costs. So not only is it the right thing to do, but there's going to be a financial incentive to get that in order.
Absolutely. And the cost of the raw material that they're going to choose to use, it could be that it's slightly higher than the less sustainable option, but the fees that will be introduced will make that go away completely.
Yeah. So Corey, you host a podcast and you do a lot in the sustainable packaging space. I'd like to have you share some important trends that you're seeing in 2021, things that are particularly important for procurement to put on their radar and really know about as they start sourcing and procuring and putting packaging programs in place.
Yeah, thank you so much. I absolutely agree with what Ryan was saying. Extended producer responsibility is going to be massive change. My friend Chandru runs a PET recycling facility in South Africa, and they're planning to start in November for extended producer responsibility, and he is already seeing a massive uptick in demand for PET recycled material. Because not only does it add to the cost for the producer, it also requires that for most places, that they include a higher percentage of PCR content. So this is going to cause a massive spike in demand for PCR material. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that will make the municipalities change the laws so that recycling is advantageous to Joe consumer. Like in Oregon, we have the bottle deposit, a 10-cent for every can, every bottle, every container that encourages people to recycle. So we have very good recycling rates here. And similar to Maine. Maine and Oregon are very similar. Oregon was the first state to institute the bottle deposit system. There are 9 states that do that. And in my opinion, I think there'll be many, many more in the future. Or the alternative to that is there'll be companies like Ridwell and Recyclops that will pick up the slack and make recycling easier for the consumer. And if you're not familiar with their systems, they have an Uber style pickup of recycling at your doorstep. And it's very inexpensive, and it's a great new trend in recycling. Thank you.
So one of the things I hear a lot, because I've spent many years in the procurement space, is procurement professionals buy a lot of different things. So they're not necessarily packaging experts. It's one of 10 or 15 categories that they're buying. And they don't even sometimes know where to start on the sustainable packaging journey. And it can be a bit overwhelming when it's not something like all of you are living and breathing every day. So James, how should somebody in procurement even tackle or get started on the sustainable packaging journey? What are some tips and tricks, or kind of how do you even initiate and start those conversations?
Well, it should start honestly with the end customer. The end customer should be demanding it. The market should be telling you this is where you're going. If you plan on doing it on your own, if you plan on saying we're going to do this as a corporate responsibility, some things you need to really understand. First of all, procurement, the bottom line with procurement is always price. It's always pricing. It's always, and sustainable packaging is not necessarily cheaper. So if you're not gonna, if that fact is not, because for some people that's a brick wall. That's a, yeah, we'd love to do it, but even if a procurement person would love to do it, selling it to their boss, selling it to the CFO, selling it when we're gonna actually spend more on packaging. Because that's literally what they will hear. You'll come in, you'll give this big speech, but in the end, what your bosses are gonna hear is we're gonna spend more on packaging. So more times than not, you will be spending more on packaging on certain things. There are exceptions, obviously. Recycled corrugated is cheaper than virgin right now. There are certain things like that, but I get clients coming to me all the time with honey, with snacks, health snacks, and that kind of thing. We want a more recyclable, we want a more sustainable solution for this. And then so we go down through, okay, well, what's your price point, first of all? So the first thing to think is, is the market demanding this, or is this something we as a corporation is demanding this? Is this something I've been asked to do? Is it something I just think is the right thing to do? There's a different answer depending on what that situation is. So let's just assume the market is telling you, your customers are telling you, we want more sustainable packaging. You have competition that's coming out offering sustainable packaging, that kind of thing. So the first thing you need to do is decide what's my packaging now? What's the sustainability of my packaging now? If it's corrugated, the corrugated has a great story. It's all recyclable. and then you can pretty much recycle it anywhere. You can recycle it in the blue bin outside, you can take it to the store, everything. Once you get into polyfilms and that kind of thing, sometimes it's recyclable, sometimes it's not. Sometimes and then there's commercially recyclable and residentially recyclable. Do you have to take it down to the grocery store to get it recycled, or can you put it out in front of your blue bin? The market has to understand all that. And I think what we don't do a lot of is educating the market on sustainability, why it's good. There's a big thing of plastic bigger than the size of Texas and the Pacific Ocean that continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why is that a problem? Why do we care? Why do we care that plastic gets, sinks down in beads and it's eaten by fish, and then all of a sudden we eat it? Why do we care? Why does all that matter to you? So one, you got to make sure that people buying your product are willing to go on board this journey with you, because a lot of times it's not going to be cheaper. And so understand that, and then you will understand your company's true commitment to it. Once you've got your company's true commitment to it, your choices become pretty easy. If you're selling trays, if you're selling food packaging, there are all sorts of innovations for that. If it's boxes and shippers, there are innovations for that. Recycle corrugated, like I said, you can get a price point break for buying 100% recycled corrugated. The market in corrugated has gotten to the point where even things that are sold as virgin still have about 30% recycled recycled content in it. So there are a lot of good stories you can get out of it. But the first thing, and I'm saying this because this, like my dad would say, this is not what I heard. This is what I know. So because customers come to me all the time asking me about, well, I have this this health snack. We want sustainable packaging for the snack, for the shipper, for everything. And then I have to just go down the line and let them know, hey, in a lot of instances, it's not going to be cheaper. And part of it is just the availability of it. How many people are doing it? It's a hot thing. It's a hot thing to jump on now. So a lot of your competition is buying it up. Recycled PET is a great example. Coke just decided we're going to do recycled PET. Now all of a sudden, recycled PET is some of the hardest thing to get because Coke just decided to suck it all up. If Amazon ever decides they're going to go to 100% recycled paper for their boxes, the recycled paper market is going to get a huge bump because the availability is going to be scarce. So there are all sorts of factors, and I wish I could give you a simple answer, but the first thing you want to start with is, why are we doing this? Is the market forcing us to do this, or are we deciding it's going to do it? I can tell you one's going to be an easier journey than the other. And you can pretty much guess which one. It's always easier if your end customers are demanding it. Then you have an easy road. You go ahead because you got a story you can sell. But what you can always start doing is start educating the public about packaging, about why certain plastics are bad, why what is commercially recyclable. Because honestly, to say it's recyclable, all I got to do is say it's recyclable. I don't have to tell you how it's recyclable. And Matt's laughing because we do that all the time in this industry. I can just slap recyclable on it. That doesn't mean I can throw it in my blue bin right outside. And I live in LA, so the blue bin is your recycled bin. So doesn't mean I can just do that. If I have to put it together and then take it down to the grocery store, chances are it's probably going to get thrown in the trash. That's what we're missing, is educating the public as to why that's bad. But it's got to start with your end customers.
Hey, I'll chime in for a shameless plug. If they were a subscriber to my publication, they would get some news. This month, the topic of hand is sustainable packaging. So shameless plug for green markets.
No shade ever for a shameless plug. Do it when you can.
Tacking on the James real quick, I think a bigger question, especially for the US, is why does it cost the consumer so much to do recycling curbside when it is free in Canada?
Yeah.
They pay for trash. I pay more for recycling in Atlanta than I do for my trash on a quarterly basis. That's a bigger problem.
Why do only 38% of Americans have access to recycling? That's the bigger question.
Absolutely. I mean, you got different cities. A city like Los Angeles recovers about 75% of its recycling. So huge for a city that size, but it took a lot. I can tell you, I've been an Angelino most of my life. I can tell you it took a lot. And it took a lot of education. It took a lot of things. And there's a lot of recycling centers around town that give out money. It just took a lot. And I think that's a level of commitment I don't know that we're all willing to do, or I don't know that we all realize the level of commitment. But at some point, we're going to have to, because at some point, the earth is going to make us do it. And I personally.
Isn't there a regulatory requirement in the state of California too that's stricter than other parts of the country?
I wouldn't know of one that's stricter than other parts. I do know municipalities. I don't have to recycle anything. I can just throw it all residentially. I can throw it all in the trash and leave the blue bin empty if I wanted to, and I'm never really going to get in trouble. But the key thing is I want to do it because I think it's the right thing to do, because it's been pumped in my head so much living here that it's the right thing to do. And I mean, we talk about that flippantly, but yeah, there's value to hammering a message home any kind of way you can do it, because after a while it's gonna sink in, and Los Angeles is a good story for that.
Tom,
So
you might be thinking about the new law that California is passing, the Truth in Labeling Act.
Oh, the Truth in Labeling Act, yeah, okay.
That's maybe what Tom's talking about.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So Ryan, a question for you. In all the research that you and your team have done, are there certain industries that stand out that you think have done a better job in adapting sustainable packaging so far?
Ooh. I haven't really identified any that are like really, really great. I think if I had to pull a rabbit out of a hat here and just shoot from the hip, I'd say probably health and beauty. They seem to be a little bit more conscious. You know, they're more aware of what you're putting on your skin. So you're seeing a movement where things are, you know, they're paraben free, they're non-GMO, organic. There's a much bigger movement in that direction. And so the people that care about those things are also aware and conscious of the packaging and having things that are recycled. So if I'm shooting from the hip, I'd probably say the health and beauty segment's probably on the leading edge of that.
Yeah.
That's just
And
a guess at this point.
Anecdotally, I can totally, without science, back up what you're saying, because all the clients that come to me are health and beauty clients. That they're the main ones coming to me wanting sustainable solutions for makeup, any kind of cosmetics, anything that's going to go on your skin, that kind of thing. It's always our health and beauty clients, our potential health and beauty clients that are coming in when they want to do a packaging switch. They want to always, if you offer them a proposal, they always want something in there about what would more sustainable packaging cost, how can we cut out steps, that kind of thing. So I can back that up.
Yeah, so I'm more of a paper packaging aficionado. So I'm really shooting from the hip on all this other stuff that's you know, flexibles and plastic containers and things like that.
We did my packaging show that I host every month. We did cannabis packaging last month. And it seems like that industry is pretty progressive, and there's brands doing some pretty cool things around sustainable packaging. Well, so I put cannabis up on that list also. So Corey, one of the other things that I think it's important for procurement professionals to understand is a little bit about the manufacturing process and what are some of the challenges and things that they should be looking out for. So as a manufacturer, what are the most difficult parts of manufacturing and producing sustainable packaging that you think would be useful for procurement to know about?
Right now, that answer is really simple and basic. Supply and demand. We're struggling to get paper. We're struggling to get machine time. You know, everyone all of the sudden jumped 30% in their demand, and that's pretty hard to swallow in a system that's overly taxed already and was efficient and you know, really almost overwhelmed sometimes. We went from 2-week lead times to 6-week lead times for a while there, and that was a real challenge. There are still some items that are import items that are, you know, for the first time in my career, I'm hearing things like 18 months lead time. Like, what? So all of a sudden you have to pivot, right? You have to find something that's not only sustainable, but available. You know, there's nothing sustainable about going out of business. So we want to make sure that our clients have the packaging to get their items there safely and actually get there. So I think that's the number one concern of most of the people I'm talking to. And what I'm saying is place your orders now. If you're not talking about the holiday packaging right now, you're late. And it might be too late already. So, you know, get with your trusted packaging partner or find one that's a good one, like, well, shameless plug, Landsberg Aurora, but we're here to help, and it's now's the time to buy if you're going to have packaging for the holidays.
And Corey, a follow-up question, and then I'll open this up to any of the other panelists as well. So a lot of people that I know that are in procurement that buy packaging have been buying overseas for many years, and they've never ever thought about or had to figure out how to source things domestically. What advice do you have for brands that really have no knowledge of the US market, but are worried about being able to, you know, not get products and have issues sourcing from overseas?
Yeah, I would even advise more than just buy domestic, buy local. Tom and I host a sustainable packaging room every Friday, and we talk about this a lot. Landsberg has 55 locations, and that's for a reason. We don't want to just have you buy domestically. We want you to buy locally if you can. And I know that's not always possible or feasible, but it can be. And if you have the right partners in your local area, we recommend buying as close to you as possible, because it's not very sustainable to ship it all the way around the world when you could pretty easily make it locally a lot of times. It's not always the case. There are things that still have to be procured internationally, and that's okay. And this is a global economy, and we understand that. But if you can make boxes down the street, do it. We recommend it.
Anyone else on the panel have any tips for people in procurement that have been buying overseas and want to start pivoting to local procurement?
Well, I would, a lot of times domestically may not be the fit for you, but you can also look at things like nearshoring. Mexico is a great outlet. I mean, if you were going to China, a lot of companies have moved things to Mexico, especially along the borders, shipping into the U.S. So if you're not able to get anything in the U.S., look to Mexico. You don't have the water, you don't have the pond. You basically have freight like you would any other place in the U.S. That would be a lot of suggestions we do, and we also took a lot of our clients that were sourcing in China and found other places in the world for them, India, Turkey, that kind of thing, that can offer what China does without the mess that was China in 2020. And I'm only talking about getting things out of China. I'm not talking about anything political or anything going on, but just if you had anything coming out of China, you knew what that was like. So we've moved in two places: nearshoring, Mexico, even some in a little bit into Central America, a little bit, and then looking at if your price point still puts you overseas, then we've looked at other countries too.
I'll piggyback on what James is talking about there with what's going on with freight and the reversal probably not coming anytime soon. The lack of containers being manufactured, the amount of vessels that have not been put back into work. The nearshoring or reshoring is actually going to get much more aggressive. A lot of packaging companies have started investing in additional capacity. While it's not going to be here now or next year, in the coming years, that price point will be competitive with offshore boxes. A great example of that would be in what I would call more luxury packaging around rigid boxes, right? That's a very old technology. We started it in the US in the late 1800s. Some of the equipment's from the early 1900s, and China has farly surpassed the US from a quality perspective. Just take a look at the iPhone box, for instance, if you want to see what can be done there. On the flip side, the Tiffany box, where all the jewelry is made in the US still. So it can be done. It's just a price point comparison. As you get companies that are reinvesting back into the US and looking for those more sustainable options, right, there's a second use for those box. Most folks have that phone box somewhere. Their kids are probably using it to store something in, or the Tiffany's box sits around someplace. So those secondary uses inside are fantastic. The other piece to remember is as we drive more and more sustainability, you get better and better prices because more people are using those sustainable items. So while it may be slightly higher now to go do that, you'll be saving yourself money over the next few years. So if you're looking at that longer cycle, you'll end up saving money in the long run.
The brands that I deal with, typically the quantities are smaller because they're smaller organizations. But I agree with both Matt and James about utilizing your local network. Plus technology, I think, is going to have a lot to do with more efficient production applications, digital technology specifically.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure we have time to cover two topics. One is around fulfillment and warehousing. This is something that is often high on the list for procurement, and they're often involved in setting up and managing those programs. And then the second is freight. How can procurement reduce the freight expense with their packaging? Because I know this is something that is really become important and on their radar, and more procurement professionals have been tasked with managing the freight spend at companies. So Tom, I want to start with you and talk about fulfillment. So what are things that procurement professionals should do and not do when they're looking to set up fulfillment programs for their packaging?
Again, this is not necessarily my area of expertise, but like anything else, I try to do some testing and obviously interviewing a number of different 3PLs for your fulfillment requirements. If you're not going to do it internally, the best thing to do is almost create a competition to see who can facilitate it the best. I have a client right now, or actually also a colleague, who's a CBD brand, and he was having so much difficulty with his 3PL partners that he ended up starting his own 3PL organization. Another area that I do have some experience in is cold chain or perishable goods. That's a kind of a tough one for small brands, but I think it's an area where there's a lot of growth. Some of the people that provide those services charge integration with their software capabilities, all their shopping solutions. My thought is just to do a great evaluation of the partners that are can facilitate your program.
And James and Matt, on the panel Tuesday, we talked a little bit about print on demand or on-demand production.
Mhm.
What sort of quantities should procurement teams be looking out for smaller run versus larger run? Because I think that can have a big impact on what type of fulfillment partner or program a company needs to run.
Well, it's really about how much you order at a time. Not necessarily, that's everything's priced on, and everything that they will plan everything on is how much you order at a time. Also your annual spend, but what's more important is how much you order at a time. So if you're around that 5,000 piece, sub 5,000 piece, I think you can go with a small fulfillment house, and a lot of box plants have in-house fulfillment with a few people there. You know, if that 5,000, once you get over that amount, you're probably going to want to look for a 3PL, something like that. You're going to want to look for somebody that does something bigger. What we do, and everybody's doing a shameless plug, I will do it too. What we do at JKT Packaging Solutions is we attack it from a different front. We look at the design of the box and the design of how you put things in the box, and we look at if there are steps we can take out of it. If we can design a step out of it, if we can put an insert that means you don't need to send something over, if we can make it so it doesn't leak, so you don't have to put a bag over a spray bottle like we did for a fertilizer manufacturer. Save them $100,000 over a year, and those kind of things are also things that a lot of people don't think about. But that's why we're in business. You come see us, and we look at the whole thing. And a design is something that's all too often left out, because design, frankly, is left to the manufacturer. Usually design is left to the supplier. And as I tell people all the time, being a former supplier, my goal was always to sell you more paper. I could flip a design, I could do whatever, but if it's a hard sell to go back to my bosses and say, hey, we're going to make less money on this box because of our design. So it's always to sell you more paper. So I would say, I mean, as a way that's not thought about a lot, is look at the design of the box, see if you can take some steps out of it. But if you're going to go small to big, the number that I've seen is about 5,000 pieces per order tends to be what's considered the break point between small and big.
And then Matt, we'll start with you. One of the other things that I mentioned that's becoming really a hot topic for procurement is freight and transportation costs. How do they control it? How do they manage it? What are some tips that you have for people in procurement wanting to make their packaging lighter, but they have no idea where to start and how to do that?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is engage your current packaging company. They all know what it is. If they're not bringing it forward to you, they're probably not really partnering there. They know your freight costs are going up. It's made the news all over the place. There was huge 2019 going into Christmas for Target, right? They were only going to get a 30% lift, and they were going to get additional charges for anything over that they ship through FedEx and UPS. FedEx and UPS, USPS about 5 years ago started moving to dim weights. So it was dimensional weight. It was the dimensions of the box plus the weight of the item. If your corrugated manufacturer or your packaging partner hasn't talked to you about dim weights and how to move down on those tables, that's the first question I would go push back to them. Beyond that, it would be getting somebody that can partner with you, right? Corey, James, myself, Tom, to go out there and say, hey, let's take a holistic view of what you're doing from a package perspective. How can we shave an inch here, shave a little bit off of this, move that from an insert to some sort of origami? I threw that out in the comments earlier when Ryan was talking about some stuff. That's all that die cut stuff that gets put around items. I just like to call it korigami. I don't know if somebody's coined that term or not, but that's what it is to me. All that folded up stuff is great, right? It's much better than throwing some of these styrofoam peanuts in or air pillows that confuse people. There's a lot of ways to drive sustainability and lower costs and freight by just taking a look at it with your current packaging providers. And if they're not willing to do it, there's somebody out there that's willing to help you with that. And you may pay the same thing for your packaging, but your freight rates will go significantly down. And your freight is worth way more than your packaging costs.
And then the other thing to remember is everybody's freight rate is going up. So your supplier's freight rate to get it to you has gone up too. So again, when you're doing this, and this is why, again, another shameless plug, if you go to your supplier, understand the point they're coming from. They're getting pushed with all the price pressures that you are. Freight, labor, all the inputs, it's all coming to them too. And they've got to try and make money too. So unless you are a very savvy buyer and you know exactly what to tell them and what you want for your liner combinations and what kind of dim weights you want or something like that, you're going to get something back from them. It may or may not be what's best for you. As Matt was saying, some suppliers are just in it to sell you more paper, not necessarily to partner with you on it. So understand that part too, and then maybe read Ryan's column to where you can get educated on the whole thing.
There are third-party providers that also do negotiation with the freight companies, whether it's FedEx, UPS. Mm-hmm. If you're a large enough buyer of services, you probably could save money that way as well.
Yeah, and that tees up my last question for Ryan, and then I'll see if anyone else wants to add in. One of the kind of dirty words in procurement is working with a broker. That does not always have the best reputation in the procurement industry. But I think for very, very niche categories like packaging, it can be tremendously valuable. So Ryan, how should somebody in procurement look at hiring a packaging broker? When does it make sense? When does it not make sense? What are some of the things they should look out for and avoid?
Well, I'm going to have maybe an unpopular opinion here. I think you hire experts all the time. Mm-hmm. So whether it's the guy that's doing your sheetrock at your house or a roof or whatever, when you find somebody that establishes credibility as an expert, they address things that no one else addresses. A quick example. We had to take some trees down in my community. There were 6 pine trees that were dead. I called company A. Company A says, oh, 6 pine trees. It'll cost you $8,000. Company B came out and says, 6 pine trees. You got to have more pine trees around here somewhere. Let's go check those and make sure they're not dead. We walked the entire property. He says, ooh, these are diseased. We need to look at these. Ooh, we need to limb these up. These are too close. He established himself as an expert. And when he did that, we hired him. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, when you hire somebody, it's about a transference of value or utility. If somebody can prove that they know what they're talking about, they've got a good resume, a good repertoire of things that they've represented. They have a catalog of great projects that they've put through. You hire them. If they haven't done that, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think that all procurement people need to realize is, and I know I've said it on another panel you have, Sarah, is that the person selling you the packaging knows more about packaging than you. The person selling you the box, the person selling you the poly, they know more about this stuff than you do. So you are at an inherent disadvantage immediately. So if you can recognize that, then maybe you would look at hiring experts to do something a little different. But understand, unless you are and I tell people, if you're buying $50 million worth of corrugate, you're not buying $50 million worth of corrugate, because for $50 million worth of corrugate, any corrugated company will do anything you want for them. So you're not really flexing any of those skills. And all my corrugated people are laughing because they know that. So understanding that you are at a disadvantage when you talk to this person selling you a box, a pouch, or bag, or a super sack, or a carton. They know more about any of this stuff. They know the cost levers, they know the market, they know all of it more than you do. So if you're comfortable with that, okay, but understand, you may need help.
So I'm going to do my shameless plug here, and then I'll be quiet. So for Cure Analytics, we charge nothing to our customers to analyze your packaging. It's 100% free of charge to you guys. We get a maintenance fee from the suppliers. So if you need help looking at anything, that is all we do is packaging, and we'd be happy to take a look at stuff.
So to close out the panel, I'd like to have each of you share a new packaging innovation that you are most excited about and the best place for people to connect with you. If there's a social platform, a website, an email that you want to share with the group. So Tom, let's start with you.
Sure, I was looking forward to this part.
I'm seeing a show and tell coming on here.
Ironically, a lot of innovation is happening in Australia right now, especially around plant-based films. This is a company I ordered a kit from. They sell these mailers that are all plant-based. It's a company called Hero Packaging. Can't find the other sample. I represent a company that sells corrugated liner that's used for cold chain. And this can replace styrofoam containers. Obviously, you have to be careful about the applications for it, but we also sell a recycled poly for it. Another thing I've been seeing a lot of lately is molded fiber trays packaging for food products. This is going to be a huge area, I think.
And Tom, if people in the audience or who are watching our session later want to connect with you, where should they do so?
I will post my email address in the chat if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody.
please do. Thanks, Tom. Ryan, you're up next.
Yeah. So while I'm a paper person, the one that I'm most excited about is a company out of California called Cruise Foam, and they make a foam, a protective packaging foam that's made from chitin. It's a substance that's found primarily in shellfish and other places, but their foam is tunable. So they have an option where they construct this stuff and it will perform like expanded polystyrene, or they can change and it will be more like expanded polyethylene. And they're making incredible leaps and bounds right now. They're in my write-up because they're doing this from an interest and business standpoint. So they have a lot of interest. It's a great product. It is compostable, and they have a lot of traction right now with appliances. I think they just struck a deal with either Pepsi, and I think the other one was Ford. So that's a pretty cool one to look out for, and it's Cruz, as in CRUZ foam. Great people. And if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn's a great avenue for that. LinkedIn.com/n/RyanDFox. You can also email me at rfox93@bloomberg.net.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Corey, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I've got a whole bunch that I'm excited about, but this is my number one most excited about right now. And it's a direct replacement for polystyrene and bubble mailers for bottles, and it's called FlexiHex, and it's a paper based, and you can see that it's curved to match the bottle, but the bottle goes inside of it and just slides over the top, and then it has a very highly engineered corrugated structure on the outside. I had a meeting with them this morning. They'll be on my podcast in a few weeks. It's not available yet in the USA, but we're planning to partner with them to bring it here. And I could see it in the wine industry, in the spirits industry. It covers snowboards, surfboards. It's going to eliminate a lot of styrofoam and bubble wrap, which is great.
Reached out to them too, by the way, Corey, but I haven't heard anything back.
Right on. Yeah, man. I'm happy to connect you. And If you want to reach me, check out my website, coreygated.com. That's CORY, like my name, gated, GATED.com, or my email, corey.connors@landsberg.com.
And Corey, you also host a podcast. So some of the people with us today might be wanting to learn more about packaging. Where can they go to learn more about your podcast?
Yeah, my podcast is called Sustainable Packaging with Corey Connors. It's on Apple, it's on Spotify, it's on Google, it's on all the big guys. And anybody who's interested in being a guest, send me an email. This panel is full of very learned packaging experts. So I'm excited to talk to some of you on my podcast if you're interested.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. James.
I talked about it at the panel earlier in the week. Astral coatings and adhesives. They've come up with a proprietary coating that would get put on a folding carton and on a tray like Tom held up for a food tray or something like that. And it totally eliminates the need for any kind of plastic packaging. So this coating is 100% compostable, recyclable, residentially recyclable, and the goal is to change the world and get rid of plastic. If you talk to Vikas Singhal, who's the CEO and founder, his goal is to get rid of plastic packaging forever. And that's what he hopes these coatings will do. So that's very exciting. And we've already referred some of our clients to him, and hopefully something comes out of that, because anything like that, I'm all about. I can be reached. I put my email address and my our website in the chat, but it's jamesj@jktrust.net, or you can see us at jktpackagingsolutions.com. And thank you again for having me. I love this. And as Corey said, there's a lot of horsepower on this panel, and I love it.
Thanks, James. Matt, you're going to close us out this evening.
Yeah, so one of my favorites has actually been put in the market, and we put it in the market with Dell Computers, actually for their high-end laptops, which is ocean plastics. So it's the folks going around collecting bottles that would be in the waterways or are in the waterways and turning that into a plastic packaging. It's something that still hasn't gone mainstream in the US. There's not a lot of places that will manufacture that or extrude it, but turning that back into reusable packaging that can be recycled again and again is something that's out there that I'm really excited about. And Dell's joined some sustainability pledges with that as well to try to support cleaning up the oceans. As James mentioned, there is a Texas-sized patch of plastic in the ocean, and I'd love my kids to be able to continue to see the oceans as much as I do.
And Matt, best way to connect with you?
So I threw my LinkedIn into the chat, but my email address is matt.reddington@procureanalytics.com.
Perfect. The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I have a hashtag called Scudder Says, and I've started something called the Scudder Wall of Packaging Shame. And I have people from all over the world that submit outrageous, wasteful packaging photos and videos. And I post those and talk about them online with the goal to bring awareness and hope that I motivate companies to really look at and change their packaging to make it more sustainable. So if you find and get something outrageous at your house, snap a picture, snap a video, shoot it over to me. I'd love to include it in one of my posts in the collection that I'm building. So Brennan, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sarah, thank you and the rest of the panel for presenting to us today. This has been interesting, exciting, and just mind-opening. So I appreciate all of you for your time today and everyone that was here for ISM Dallas. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan.
Bye.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.